Hey guys, this is Nathan and welcome to the Gaming Forward. Today in this Unturned Map Editor tutorial, I'm going to be showing you guys how to detail the office building. Now there are four types of the office building and they get progressively larger. So you've got office number 1, office number 2, office number 3, and office number 4. And obviously guys, in this video I'm not going to be able to detail all floors and all rooms of these because some of these are freaking massive. Like this number 4 building, I don't know how many floors it has, but it's got like close to 7 or 8. I'm not going to be able to detail all of those, but I should be able to give you a good idea of what you can do to at least get a start on that. So anyway, let's start with one of the smaller office buildings, and let's get some room designs in here, and just get a general idea of how we can decorate. Alright guys, so one of the better things to do when you start planning on how to detail a building is to decide what you want to be inside. So what style do you want to have inside here, and what objects and object types and stuff you want to build inside here. Now for the smaller office building, I generally actually make this one into some sort of house. Now you really don't have to, it is obviously named office number 1, but I will be focusing on how to build it like an office this time. So let's start with some tables and some chairs. It's always a good place to start, and we'll go with the metal table style. And let's just make these first couple rooms some computer labs. Now depending on the type of office, you generally will have some sort of computer area, especially if it's supposed to be an office that has a building inside it. So I'm just going to set up this room and I'll explain what I did afterwards. Alright guys, so just to start out with this first computer area, I just laid out a good table setup so it fills most of the room, but it still leaves some area for people to get through. Also, I just saw an issue with this. I can't have that table there, otherwise it blocks the doorway. But anyway, a good start for doing this is just set down tables and then set down chairs in a sort of randomized manner. So after you set up the tables for the computer room, pretty much you just got to come over here and decide what type of computer you want. We've got multiple towers, we got the old clunky desktop sort of things, and actually I think we'll use those today. It really doesn't matter though, because you'll be doing pretty much the same thing. Just with the towers, you'll be placing them underneath the desks, and with these big clunky ones, you're just going to place them on top by themselves, with the tower as an optional feature. So pretty much once that's done, you're going to want to make sure that the computers do match the chair, so they're facing the same way. That just makes it a little more realistic. And that's pretty much it for this room. You can leave it just like that, and there's not much more detail you need to do. Maybe you could add maybe a clock on the one wall, and that would be fine as well. Alright, for this other room, let's figure out some items that we want to have in here. So something most offices have is a lounge room, and I think that's what we're going to make this front room as. And so pretty much for a lounge room, there's a couple things you pretty much need, and that's going to be a couch of some sort. Now I'm going to use couch number 2 or couch number 1, and I'm probably going to have multiples of them, but generally just place those along the edges, somewhere that's going to be good to sit and sort of relax in. Now that fills up a lot of the room back there, but we still have quite a lot of extra space here. So something else that is generally found in a lounge room is a circular table. These are generally good for just relaxed, sitting in circles, chatting, talking, maybe with some food. So, you know, to allow the characters to sit around the table, we're going to need some chairs as well. So definitely don't forget to put some chairs around the table. And the best way I've found to place these chairs is to Control-C, Control-V to copy and paste, and then place them where you want, and then rotate them in the angle you want. That's the fastest way I've found to actually do this. So there's not much room left here, but there is a couple areas that we could add some things. So because it is a laundry area and maybe they want to have some snacks, I'm going to put a cooler down right here between the couches. So pretty much all you have to do is just arrange it in between the couches and make sure that the door doesn't clip into anything, and then that'll be pretty good. So this is about it. There is this extra little open area. If you guys have some of these, it's completely fine. It's good to have some areas. Maybe you could put a zombie spawn or something right here to sort of fill it up with, you know, animate objects, if not normal objects. So anyway, let's move into how to decorate the hallway. So generally these hallways are pretty boring and sort of useless. So a couple things you can do to sort of spruce them up is add a shelf number 3. I love these shelves because they fit pretty much against any wall, and they don't really take up that much room, but they do add a bunch of extra detail. So something you could do is just add a couple of these shelves along the wall line, or you could add some other things like, for example, a poster. So poster number 1, sadly it's the only type of poster, but you could add this on the wall just to get a little bit more detail and make it look a little more lively in here. Alright, so that's pretty much it for these hallways. You do have this extra area over here, but I would generally leave this empty so you can have enough room to get up the stairs. Let's focus on this back room here and figure out what we want to put in here. Alright, so a good plan for that back room is to potentially make that into an office. So I'm going to grab table wood number 1 and chair wood number 1, and I'm just going to bring those back here. Now this is going to be a pretty big office, but that's not really an issue. We just need to figure out how to organize the space effectively, and one of the better ways of doing that is choosing a corner area and making it the desk area for that office. So of course you're going to want to put the chair behind the desk, and that's generally how I start these. Now from there you're going to want to decide what you want to have on the desk. You could put computer number 3, I think it is, and this is always a good way of like getting a good computer in there that's pretty small, but it also leaves a lot of desk room. Something else you can put on there is a phone. That is always good for an office because, you know, maybe if it's a manager's room in here or something like that, he'll definitely have to take some phone calls and talk with people. Now there's still quite a lot of room left in this office, so there's a couple things we can still do. First of all, we have the object called files. Let me find them here. Here they are, and so pretty much with these files you can just choose one of the two and essentially just line them up against some of the walls. So I'm just going to put a line of files here against this wall. Obviously make sure that they're rotated correctly and make sure that they glitch into the wall just a tad, and then just copy paste using the Control C and Control V all the way down the wall. Now you can have as many of these cabinets as you want, but I would suggest not filling the entire wall, maybe leaving a little bit of extra room like this. So we still have a lot of room in our office. So there's a couple other things we can do. First of all, let's add a couch number 2. This is pretty much a chair that could be used for somebody that's visiting the office, something like that. And you can have it rotated pretty much any way you want, and it's probably a good idea to maybe snug that all the way back up. Now this is quite a lot of room in between, but it's not too bad. And also something else we can do is use one of these smaller tables, table wood number 4 or table wood number 3, and we can place it down here as sort of like a side table for that couch number 2. Along with that side table, there's a couple of things you can put on it to detail it a little better. We've got a book, a radio, a couple other things. We've got a lamp. Lamp's always a good one, so I'm going to put a lamp on there. You could also put like chess or a newspaper. So there's quite a lot of options for detailing small tables like that. Now this is actually pretty good. If you want to leave it like this would be perfect. You're filling up most of the room. There's some places to hide some item spawns, and in general you can get around the room pretty easily. Now one more thing you could add to that room just to fill up that last bit of wall space is either a wardrobe, so either wardrobe number 1 or number 2, or a shelf number 3. As I said before, shelf number 3s fit almost everywhere. They just sit really nicely on the walls, and they just fill up that extra bit of space really easily. So you could definitely put a shelf number 3 here and maybe like put a couple books on it or something. Alright, let's move to some of the rooms upstairs. And just taking a tally of the types of rooms we have, we've got a computer research lab, we've got an office, and we have a break room. So that doesn't leave too many options upstairs for these last 3 rooms. So guys, depending on the office, you could have some sort of science lab up in one of your office rooms. So I'm going to make this room the science lab, and I'm going to be using counters, I think 3 and 4 for that. Alright, so the best way to start arranging these counters is to make sure that they're facing the right direction, and then you're going to want to take probably counter number 3 or counter number 1, one of the basic cupboard ones, and line it up against the wall how you want it. Then you're going to use the Control B and Control N method to take the sink and put it inside of the counter, and then you can use Snap Transform to line them up perfectly. Now I would definitely suggest using the Control B, Control N method and Snap Transform so that you do get a perfect connection in between your counters. Now as you guys can also see, there's a little bit of an extra gap there, so if you want to, you can select the entire line and sort of even out that gap and sort of put half and half on either side, and it looks pretty good if you do it like that. Alright, so now we have a good row of counters there. And let's start putting some scientific objects on there. So if you guys search up science, you'll find science number 1, number 2, and number 3. Those are the main ones for science labs. So I'm going to copy paste all of those, and let's start arranging them on these counters. So really how you want to arrange these is up to you. Generally you're just going to want to fill the space nicely. So just start spreading them out. I wouldn't put any of them quite too near the edge of the counter just because it's a little unrealistic. This stuff is breakable and expensive, so the people working here wouldn't have them right up to the edge like that. So I would definitely have them in a little ways, but besides that it's pretty much up to you. I would suggest rotating them a little bit and moving them up and down a little bit just to make sure it looks randomized, and I would try not to clump too many of the same items together, just so that it also looks randomized and natural. So besides that, that's pretty much it for this countertop. You really don't need much more than a couple objects just sort of sitting around, and then it looks pretty good. Alright, so that's obviously not all we need to do with this room. There's a lot of space left, and more than half of the room is still left untouched. So one thing we could do is copy paste this entire counter line onto the other side and do something similar. So you're going to want to copy paste, rotate all the way around, and then snug it back up to the wall, something like that, and that it will be pretty much it for you. Now this is pretty good so that it will actually take up pretty much all the space that's left in the room. Also, like the other counter you did before, make sure you put some items on there. I'm going to be lazy about it and just copy paste the items and then just move them over. Obviously you guys can probably put a little more detail into it just to make it a little nicer for your build. Alright guys, so there's only one other thing I can think that you could actually do to improve this room, and that would be to add some lighting. So we've got light number 3, 2, 1, and number 4. And actually light number 2, 3, and 4 all add light, like actual light, to your map. As you guys can see, there's a bit of light that is on the building right now, and I would suggest maybe adding this light fixture to the ceiling of your lab. It's light number 3, as you guys can see, and I would just sort of arrange it something like that, and then copy paste maybe like 2, maybe 3 of those if you really want, and then arrange them somewhat in the middle of the room, something like that. And that'll add a bit of extra lighting to your lab and make sure it looks pretty nice and crisp and clean. Alright, so there's only like 2 more rooms left in this building, and obviously I've been doing different topics for each of the rooms, so just know that when you do this building on your own, I would try to stick to one topic. I wouldn't combine a computer lab room with like a book study or a science lab, because that's not really realistic. Normally most companies that are going to have an office building like this are just going to focus on sort of one sort of topic at a time, so I definitely would not combine this many topics into one building if you don't have to. So for this last room over here, all I'm pretty much going to do is get some tables down and some chairs. And as you noticed, I sort of arranged the room a little differently than I had before. I've got the tables in the center and the walkways on the side. You may not like this style, and that's completely fine. I would just experiment with different styles that you just come up with and see which ones you like the best. Now also something you could do when placing down tables is put chairs on either side. This would be better for a group work sort of situation where it's helpful for the people to actually face each other. Obviously you guys want to make sure you have enough room. As you guys can see in the back, there's not much room for these chairs here. So it kind of works, but you want to be careful that you don't take up too much room and that you leave some for all the passageways and everything like that. And guys, as I mentioned again, one other thing you can do to these rooms is add a clock on the wall. It's actually pretty realistic to have a clock in every few rooms inside of a building, so I would definitely place at least one inside your office somewhere. Alright guys, so I know there is one room left in this office, but I need to move on to some of the other buildings that are a lot harder actually to design. And as I said before, usually you're not going to want to have this much variety inside an office building. So for that extra room, I would suggest maybe putting another computer room or another room with wooden tables or another science lab in. That's generally a better idea for how to design rooms inside of your office. Alright, so moving on to these next few buildings, as you guys can see, there is a big difference in the layout compared to the smaller office building over here. The main difference is that you've got these huge wide open areas that have no divisions in the walls, so you sort of have to make one entire theme for each floor. Now, yeah, you generally need to keep that one theme for each floor, but there are things to do that can help you with this. So generally you're going to detail all of the office 2, 3, and 4 just about the same. And one of the main objects you're going to be using is the divider. Now I generally use divider number 2 because it looks a little nicer and it's got like those nice floor pegs. So let's start creating a divider layout for office building number 4 because it is the largest. Okay, so when starting to lay out your dividers, the first thing to think of is where are the people going to come into the room. So obviously for the larger buildings they have the elevator shafts. So generally this is where people are going to be coming in and out of your upper floors. Now also something to think about as I start arranging these is that with the buildings that have elevator shafts, if you don't have a ladder or something inside the elevator shaft, the players won't actually be able to get to the top floors without like flying a helicopter or jumping out of a plane to get there. So detailing the upper levels is not as important as detailing the lower levels that actually need all the player interaction in them. Alright guys, so here's my simple divider layout, and pretty much the whole trick to the divider layout is separating the rooms so you can have different sort of categories in each of the sections. And as you guys can see, I've sort of split it into 3 main categories. We've got an entryway sort of area over here, we've got another area over here, and another area over here. Now in each of these areas we can pretty much have one category per area. So let's start by getting table and chairs because that's always a good way to start. And let's start setting up some tables and chairs in this divider area. Alright guys, so for this first area, this is generally how I organize the tables and chairs. As you guys can see, I put a simple row along the back, made 1 chair per table, and I put 2 chair and table sets right behind this divider. And of course you guys, this is not going to be necessarily even. As you guys can tell, there's a larger gap between these tables than this table here, and that is because I kept these aligned with the divider here. So you might have to freehand some of this stuff, but generally you will come out with a pretty good looking area. Now, just like I said before, a classic thing to have in these areas is a computer setup. So I'm just going to grab some computer parts and let's put some computers under these tables and chairs. Alright, so we got a basic computer setup under each one of these tables, and that is pretty much all you need to do for this area. Now, as I said before, each of these floors is generally going to be 1 or 2 subjects, so if you guys really wanted to and keep it simple, you could put 2 more computer setups in each of these separate areas here, and pretty much they'd just be variations of this. So let's go up a floor and let's create another divider layout just so you guys can see some of the options you have with the dividers. Alright guys, so for this divider setup, as you guys can see, I've sort of created more of a cubicle type feel. We've got a bunch of small little areas, and each one I am planning is going to be its own sort of cubicle. So for these you can choose, whatever type of tables. Generally you're going to want square, so I'm going to take table number 1, I'm going to grab a matching chair, and let's start setting up some cubicles. Alright guys, so as you can see I've got my tables and chairs set up here, and also what you might have noticed is that this cubicle was actually too small to put a table and chair in. It's really way too small, but there's a fix. We can actually put some good stuff in there. So first of all, you could put one of the small side tables, that would definitely work, or you could actually put a small counter setup. Now I'm not going to put a sink because it's not going to be a full kitchen, but I am going to put maybe a coffee or an espresso machine. So this could be, sort of a small hangout area, or as I said before, a break room for the people that are in the office. So as you guys can see, we've got 3 counters that sort of fit in there pretty nicely, and then there's a couple appliances we can put on there. We've got coffee, we've got microwave, toaster. Those will all work, and it really just depends on how much counter space you have, because you don't want to overcrowd these countertops. So it looks like all the counter space we're going to have right now is enough for a microwave and a coffee machine, but those are probably the 2 most important ones to put in there anyway. And last but not least, let's just grab a few chairs to put in there as well, just so that the people that are relaxing or having a break can actually just sit down or something like that. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this floor. You can put whatever you want on these tables and in these office areas, but this is a good setup to get you started. Some suggestions would be either books or computers. Computers would definitely be a high suggestion here, but pretty much anything else you could think of to put on these tables and in these little cubicles would work as well. So let's see if we can fit one more unique setup in terms of dividers in this building. Alright guys, so as you can see with this floor, I did choose a very different setup. I wanted to create a larger version of the science lab that we sort of created down there before. Now there's only one other thing I was missing in terms of the main dynamics of the room, and that was the sink. And so just like before, you're going to use the Control B and then Control N method to copy the sink in there, and then you can just get rid of that countertop itself. And I would, if you do something like this, have at least one sink on every side. Now of course you can and probably should randomize it, but that's just up to you. And then let's start moving some scientific gear up into this room. Alright guys, so that's pretty much it for detailing the science area, and that's also almost pretty much it for this video. So guys, hopefully this gives you a good idea of how to start arranging and how to start detailing the insides of these offices. I also have some objects that are a lot larger and that you would use sort of sparingly, one of which is the elevator number 1. So as you guys may notice, these buildings do not come with an elevator. So if you want to add an elevator that is sort of stuck at a floor or something like that, there is elevator number 1 for that purpose. So obviously this fits in here, and of course once you put it in here, the people cannot access the elevator or ride it up any more of the floors. Speaking of which, if you do want them to be able to get up into the higher floors, make sure you use a ladder. So I would definitely suggest a ladder metal, and I would put it somewhere like this. So just have it somewhere against the wall, but make sure that it's close enough to the exit that they can actually get into the next floor. So all I would pretty much do with this is just copy paste it and get it all the way up to the top floor if you want, or get it pretty much as high as you want. So that's pretty much it for the ladders and the elevators, but just know that that is an option if you do want the players to be able to easily access the upper floors. Now also, we have some AC units. If you want to design some sort of AC setup on the top of these buildings, that is completely up to you. It adds a lot of extra nice detail just for those that are maybe flying above your map or something like that. So even something as simple as that makes the building look a lot better. Something else you can put on top of the building is a helipad. Obviously this is really large, and it's not going to fit very well on the top of any of these buildings, but on the few tallest office buildings you definitely can fit a helipad on top of here, and this would be another good way of having players get onto the upper floors of your office. So besides those, there's only one last thing that you really could put on top of a office building, and that is radar. So I've got a tons of different radar stuff here. We've got radar 4, radar 3, radar 2, and radar 1. Generally you're going to be using radar 2 and radar 1 just because they fit a little better. They're not quite as large, but if you did want to use some of the other ones, you could do that as well. And of course, like I said before, these also add quite a bit of good detail to the top of your building. So definitely think about adding these to your office buildings as well. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it for this video. Obviously there's a lot more objects down here. Feel free to just experiment with any of these ones you see. There's so many different uses for these office buildings. You can put almost anything inside of them. You could put almost a whole wall inside an office building. So anyway guys, please like, please subscribe